Wondering what's happening in Iowa? Curious what you've missed on your favorite show? Searching for an escape into an uplifting piece of classical music or an up-and-coming band? Find it in the Iowa Public Radio app. Our latest stories, national news, live radio, Iowa culture, podcasts, it's everything IPR, wherever you are. Search IPR in the Apple or Android App Store, or download it now at ipr.org/app.
This is Garden Variety, a horticulture podcast from Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm Charity Nebbe. When you buy a real Christmas tree at a farm, a tree lot, or store, you're buying an agricultural product. More than 35 million Christmas trees are harvested every year in the United States, and there are approximately 200 Christmas tree growers in Iowa. DNR Forester Mark Vitosh is here to give us some insight into the industry that brings so many people joy this time of year. Hello, Mark.
Good morning.
It is wonderful to have you here. And Christmas tree farming involves long-range planning, of course. So how old are most of the trees that we buy this time of year?
It takes a lot of work, too. It's not just sticking a tree in the ground and coming back in 6 years and having a tree to harvest. On average, depending on species and depending on site, it takes 6 to 12 years to produce a 7 to 10-foot Christmas tree. So most of those that you're cutting out there are probably somewhere between 7 and 15 years, depending on species, depending on site. But it takes a lot of work to get to that point. And if you think about it, if you're starting a project, an investment, you're looking at property, you're looking at location, you're looking at site, you need electricity, you need water, you need all those kinds of things. You need space. You probably need, the average grower in Iowa is probably between 3 and 8 acres. So they're not huge. There are some that are significantly bigger than that, but the average person, so you need a pretty good size. But you're basically saying, well, I'm going to make this investment, but it's going to be 6 to 7 years before I start getting some income back into it. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are trends that affect the kinds of trees that tend to get bought, but you have to know the best species to plant 10 years in advance. So, I mean, what are the preferred species in these days as far as growers go?
It's kind of interesting. I've been in this location for about 25 years. And out of that 25 years, I've helped with a Christmas tree plantation for probably about 20. The last 5 years, I'm not helping with the actual during the season, but I'm still going out in the fall, pre-counting trees, tagging trees for them, picking the ones for this year, but also picking the ones for the next couple of years. I'm looking ahead, trying to make sure they have enough, not trying to sell too much and stuff like that. But when I first started, I would say the top species were Scotch pine and white pine. I've been doing this for 36 years, and in this area, I would say those were the two most common. But I will tell you, a number of growers that I work with, I see very little Scotch pine anymore. There's different disease issues and different things. There really seems to be a shift to the firs. Fraser fir is one of the most liked. A lot of growers, because of their sites, can't grow it as well in Iowa. Some can grow them very well, but others have challenges. So a lot of times they'll bring some pre-cuts in from locations so they can get Fraser fir. There are some growers that can grow them. We have a fir called Canaan fir that's a little more adaptable to drier conditions that a lot of growers, if they can't grow Fraser, they grow Canaans. Some grow a few balsams. Some grow concolor fir. And I still see quite a few white pines in there. But the firs, I've really seen a shift over the last 20, 25 years that a lot more people are looking at the fir trees and a lot less of the pines. But you're always going to get people that they've always bought a Scotch pine or they've always bought a white pine, and that's what they want.
Right. Tradition is a very big deal this time of year. So walk me through this. I mean, you plant trees. When one tree is harvested, how many young seedlings would you plant?
Well, in general, it's estimated that there's probably 1 to 3 new trees planted for every one that's cut. So you said it very well. This is a product. It's an agricultural product that we're growing as a crop. It is a crop. So you're looking at replanting. And usually the other thing with species is you got to have the right site. You got to have a site that can grow certain species depending on what you want to sell. The other impact on what you grow is, the other important thing is your population centers. How close are they? Can people get out there to buy your trees and those kinds of things? But you got to get the right trees for the right site. And on average, we probably grow somewhere between 900 to 1,200 trees an acre. But we also have to do some site prep. We have to have a field that potentially has some good grass cover because we're going to want to be able to mow that and maintain that over time, especially through the years. But planting is really critical. Most of planting is done in the springtime. Conifers establish better in the spring than they do the fall, and they're usually bare root seedlings. But those seedlings can cost anywhere from $1 up to $5 to $6 a tree, because we have 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and then sometimes 2.1, 2.2. The 2 is at the beginning is it's grown in a regular nursery bed for 2 years. Then they actually dig them up and transplant them into a bigger space for 2 more years to get more root growth and stuff like that. So every year they're transplanted, you add cost to the size. So there's a big investment there to them too. Most trees, especially after you're going, you're not going to come in with a machine because you've got stumps and different things to deal with too. So you're usually hand planting. So you may be hand planting 1,000 to 2,000 trees a year, depending on the size of your operation.
And then once you plant these trees, you
don't wait 7 years and then you have a Christmas tree.
Right. So how do you care for them? I mean, obviously weather is a huge factor in whether or not these trees are successful. And are you out there watering?
Well, in most cases, if you get the right tree, the right place, which we talk about with all of our tree planting and stuff, initially you may do some initial watering, but generally through grass and weed control, they often don't water, but look at the drought conditions we've had the last 3 to 5 years. That's had a big impact on Christmas trees. And again, that has an impact 7 to 8 years later, because if they lose a phase of that rotation, then it affects them 7 to 8 years later. So
they may just not be as big. They may not survive.
They have to fill
all
in.
Kinds of
but
things. Yeah.
Weed and grass control is really critical. Keeping those fields clean, keeping a lot of weeds out away and a lot of competition so those plants grow better. The other big thing is just monitoring those trees on a regular basis for health. There's a lot of disease and insect threats. There's drought, there's floods, there's too much rain, not enough rain, there's pathogens, there's all kinds of things that, again, you got to have your head on a swivel and you got to be looking at things on a regular basis. The other thing is, even after the first, second year, you may already start to do a little pruning.
All right, because when we go to shop for a Christmas tree, that's the main thing most of us are thinking about. Do we like the shape?
Right. So you don't want a double leader. So in the first year or two, they may already be pruning that. But if a bird comes and lands on that and breaks a stem, then you're pruning to fix that later on. And then once you start to get, 10 to 12 inches of top growth, then you start to actually have to shear that tree. So that may be year 4 or 5. In some cases, maybe year 3, depending on growth. But you're physically coming in and you're cutting the top of that tree to a certain degree, and then you're actually shaping that tree for the future. And you're doing that, once you start shearing, you're doing that every year until that tree's harvested. Then you might also be creating a handle where you're actually pruning from the bottom so that people can get in there to cut it when they drop it, or they like it so they can have their presence there.
If you have a farm where people get to go cut their own trees, which is such a magical tradition for so many people.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And so, I mean, and the other thing is that controlling weeds and stuff, birds love to sit on evergreen trees. Well, things that come out, poison ivy, cedar trees, cherry trees, hackberry. The last thing you want in a plantation is the people come out in the winter and they're going through poison ivy vines and stuff. So all that kind of maintenance and keeping that kind of looking really nice and clean. And so when they walk up into those fields and all they see is these beautiful trees and not a lot of other stuff, that takes a lot of work.
All right. So give a moment this year when you buy your tree, or maybe you've already got it at home, to think about the people who grew that tree. Mark Vitosh, DNR District Forester. For more gardening information and tips, subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Find out more at iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. Garden Variety is a production of Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension. It's produced by me, Erin Stile, Caitlin Troutman, and the Iowa Public Radio talk show team. For more garden goodness, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Just go to iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time.